thank you for joining in. Today we are doing a special episode or this video recording with Swarad, and there are some interesting things for us to kind of cover up in this today's recording. But before that, let me introduce myself. I'm Prateek Jain, Director of DXP Services at Axelerant, and I'm joined by Swarad. Swarad, can you please introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Myself, Swarad Mokal. I'm the Technical Program Manager at Axelerant. And I typically try to tinker with things. And today is one such occasion which has led me to Prateek and this show. Looking forward to it, Prateek.
Yeah, I like you said show because I think we can definitely turn this around into a show. While this is a one-off video right now, but let's see. But before we get into the details of it, sir, right? I mean, let me ask you this, right? I mean, we have known each other for really, really long. I think maybe over 13, 14 years, right? This is probably our third organization together, and pretty much all the organizations that we have worked so far in my careers as well. What is the first thing that you remember that kind of reminds you of me, and then what do you recollect about the first meeting or first connection?
I can't. I mean, I think the first time we talked, it was on the phone. It was not a meeting, if I'm right? But I think the first time we met, I feel like just bonding and laughter. I feel like we bonded very quickly. And it was like we were on the same wavelengths around technology and in general what we like, the fun stuff, the not so fun stuff. So it's been a fun journey for sure. Seeing you,
absolutely. Yeah, no, I definitely recollect our integration point was APIs, I think, back then. I mean, I think that's one of the things that we're going to cover today as well, by the way. So you were writing backend and I was writing mobile applications, and then APIs were our, that's how we were communicating with each other. And I guess that's what we are going to cover up as well today. So can you briefly introduce, what are we really talking about today? And what do you plan to show in this call today?
Well, today, I mean, in one word, it's AI. There is no way to escape that reality. And I think we have been, like I said, we have been tinkering with many of the things AI in general for a while inside Axelerant. There have been many POCs, hackathons, actually multiple hackathons where AI has been a prominent topic teams have took up. And I mean, there's just so much going around inside Axelerant, in the outside world as well around AI that, I mean, I just thought it's a good idea to kind of just discuss what are the different components, how things work. You can have very simple POCs done, very complex as well. And we will talk about those today. How to get something running very quickly on your local machine, but how to actually scale this up into a production ready application as well. I mean, we will talk about examples as well. I'm not sure we will have time to show all of them, but hopefully it will be a fun talk for sure.
I mean, definitely, right? I mean, you can't escape AI these days, right? And in fact, I was just reading a few hours back that by the end of 2024, out of 5 lines of code, at least 1 line would be written by AI. So that's how prominent the AI would become for developers as well.
Yeah, to add on to that, I won't be surprised if it's not writing 2 lines already. I mean, I think all the developers. So I work with engineers across different organizations, and I typically ask this question. How are you using AI as part of your workflow? And I think everybody says that they are everybody says that, while writing code, they are kind of making sure that, let's say for simple snippets or, writing a API call or something, writing a unit test case, nobody's bothering with Google anymore. It's they have some kind of AI integration in their editors or some subscription somewhere. And they are just saying that, hey, give me this function or give me this few lines of code. And that's where people are starting off. So I think it's already changed, that 1 line that you are saying, I don't think that is the accurate statistics anymore.
Yeah. No, I'm sure. I mean, actually, Hussein is doing a lot within the DevX services, and then Hussein and a few other folks internally trying to adopt AI for our entire developer experience side of things. But said that's not what we are going to talk about today. I know. I mean, we are going to focus on the specific generative AI use case
Yeah.
that we are going to talk more about, right? So, what's the inspiration? I know you already mentioned the hackathon, right? Is this the POC which we'll talk about? I know we are still not talking what exactly it is, but then what's the inspiration behind it? Like, is it that
Yeah.
one of the ideas within the hackathon that popped up, or what inspired you to do this?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I have been tinkering with these things. Like, Hugging Face is one of the community sites where you have a lot of AI models, and I have been like on and off through it and trying different models here and there. Like, there are some sites where you can run AI models on the cloud, like with at least a free subscription. The subscriptions are way too costly for me, but yeah, I mean, I've been doing that. At the same time, like I said, like there is just too many things AI related happening in house with hackathons, and we have been trying AI pretty aggressively on different fronts. And recently, like I also stumbled upon some interesting topics within the community as well on Drupal. Like there is like a sick editor plugin where you can integrate like like AI to generate content for you if you were to give out a prompt. There are already plugins with like they generate SEO meta tags, and they generate like stub images for you based on the content and whatnot. So yeah, like I said, like there is no escaping AI. The main thing was to try something locally, and this was like one of the interesting demos I stumbled upon from I think her name is Akanksha, and it was something I was trying to do as well, and I was like just curious, okay, how it has been done there, and I kind of repurposed that demo to try something that I was anyways doing, and yeah, I mean, like I said, there was this whole context around AI as well, and that's where you and me kind of met
Yeah.
and decided to talk about it.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. So I know what demo you are kind of talking about in general, but then yeah, I know we have done a lot of build up already. I think why don't we
Yeah.
just get started with the demo and then maybe talk through it a little bit. So is that something that you can show to us, like what exactly it is and how it works, and explain the different components that are part of it?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So let me quickly bring my screen up. So yeah, I have. So just to give a background, right? This is like a plain Drupal 10 site. I kind of attempted to upgrade it to Drupal 11, but I've not managed to do it yet. That's another story. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, this is a plain Drupal 10 site. It has some content, and I have been like playing around with what to do with AI around it. And I was looking into something called as a RAG AI framework, and we will talk about more around RAG as I explain things, right? But to give you a brief like introduction around what it is, right? So let's say our Drupal site has a lot of content, right? So I'm intentionally focusing on these two pages here because these two pages are like there is one piece of content here and then there is one piece of content here, right? But with AI, what we can do is, and I'm using like a Postman app
Mhm.
where I'm basically like making an API call to the LLM model and the RAG server, which will basically give me the answer, right? So I can ask something like, "What do you know about Kimmy's first victory?" Right? And if I were to ask it, right, you can see that in the below part of my window, bottom part of my window, I have like a terminal open, and it's showing some interesting stats. I'm not sure how many. Like if you are able to recognize some of these things, like for example, this model params, right? So this says 7.25b. So this is like
Okay.
7.25 billion. So the model that I am using is called as Mistral, and it's like one of the models, open models that exist today, and it uses 7 billion parameters. So we'll talk more about what these parameters are later on as well.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, while we wait for the API call to come back, I can probably talk about this, right? So, like I was saying, like these are different models that you can use to run this setups. So one of these models that I am using today is called as Mistral, right? And if I were to show you, so yeah, so you can see this parameters here, right? This parameters column. So
Right.
these are different models that you have. So this is the one that I'm running. It's 4.1 GB. It's a 7 billion parameter model. But the interesting part here is like you should see the requirements that are needed to run this model, right? So even for a 7B model, it says it needs to run like a 8 GB of RAM machine, 16 GB for 113B, 32 GB for
Mhm.
33B models, and so on. So you can just imagine, right? Like something like Llama, which is like a very popular model today. It scores excellently across multiple domains.
Right.
It's the Meta's model, right? And it has
Yeah.
405 billion parameters. Just imagine the specs that you will need to run this model in a production scenario.
So what
So
are
yeah,
these
I mean,
parameters like?
yeah,
What exactly is this parameter? Like, how is 7 billion parameters? I'm assuming more the parameters, the better it is. But then, like,
correct.
how do you identify the best model or out over here?
Yeah, so see, there is no best model. I mean, some models are better at something than another. Like let's say there are models that are better at coding, for example, right? There are
Okay.
models better at reasoning and knowledge. Some models are better at like content generation, different areas like music, science, maths. So depending on what you want your AI product to do, right? You can pick and choose these models, and these parameters are like configurations essentially of how that model is set up. So you can tweak these parameters to tailor the output of that model or tailor that model and its reasoning capacity as per your need.
Got it. Okay. Okay. That's interesting.
Let's quickly
Um,
see if my output is back. Okay, no,
yeah.
not yet.
Yeah. This
It's still
definitely is.
waiting.
So I'm assuming you're running
Yeah,
all
yeah.
of this on your local machine, right? I mean,
Yeah,
what's the
yeah, I'm
configuration of the
running.
machine?
So if you see right on this Docker desktop interface that I have open, my CPU is
Yeah.
right now in this container. It's 873% capacity running. So
Right.
that's one of the drawbacks actually of running these models on local. Uh,
Uh-huh.
you can like pretty much max out whatever configuration you are running. Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
I mean that's like one of the drawbacks, but it does allow you to tinker with the models on your local. Um, and yeah, I mean
Okay.
there is like no other way to do it at the moment. So
Yeah. So, but then is it like I know we are going to discuss the architecture in detail, but I'm just curious, right? I
yeah,
mean, because like your CPU usage is shooting up like about 1,000%
yeah,
over here. Um, are these models, and you're already using only 7 billion parameters? So, are we saying that
yeah,
like to use models like the Llamas, what was the other like 350 billion or those kind of
yeah,
parameters
yeah.
is kind of difficult to do that, or maybe not possible to do that on like day-to-day machine? I mean, you really need a really high scaled up architecture for that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, I mean, you would typically not host these models on your local machine, anyways.
Yeah.
It won't be like the final product won't be running on your local machine, that's for sure. But the the thing about AI model is that it needs to like there are just a lot of computations in there, and we will talk later on about things like vector DB, for example, right, and what it does and how it is like an integral part of like let's say the RAG setup. But in order for this setup to work, you really need like a scalable architecture. Really like think about where you will be hosting it, what tools you will be using. But yeah, I mean, I can definitely say local is not the best place to run this for sure. And as I say that, like you can see the output is here, right? So I just asked about the first victory, and it just replied back with like exact statistic of that from the content that I have added, and it gave
Yeah.
me like a nice English sentence which I can like you know we can understand very easily. So yeah, I mean this is like just a teaser. Now imagine like this is I am running it via a Postman setup. This is like a
Uh-huh.
API calling tool. But this API can be very easily called from like let's say a Drupal site or a chatbot or something like a mobile application or a web application or something like that.
Got it. So if I understand right, so you added your content into a Drupal website. Somehow it got indexed somewhere, right? And
Yeah,
using this Mistral model and Olama, you were able to kind of create the generative. I mean, create these prompts or use these prompts and generate the responses on top of that. Is that how broadly it works?
Yeah, correct. You are absolutely correct. So that's how broadly it works. In fact, like we don't have to use things like somewhere and somewhat. I plan
Yeah.
to actually show you that architecture and at a very high level, at least explain what does this setup look like. Like typically when people talk about AI, right? They don't realize that they are actually bunching a lot of things together into this umbrella called AI. So I think it's important for everyone to understand that what is the constituents of this term, right? And what are the different choices that you can make? What can be the different hosting choices you can make, and so on.
Yeah. So no, that's interesting. So let's deep dive into that architecture as well.
Okay, so let's focus on something very simple, right? Like working with a RAG setup. So the simplest part of this, like let's say the puzzle, right, of how to set up AI is the content piece. So
Sorry, I mean I'm going to stop you right away. What is RAG? You will have to explain it to
So
me first.
I'm coming to that, but okay, you want to start with that? I can start with that as well. So okay, let's start with RAG. Okay, so what is a RAG model, right? So RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. I mean, I know like it's a whole topic in itself to cover, but RAG typically has two components. Okay, so there is a retriever and there is a generator, and the retriever is like it retrieves data from sources like let's say a vector database, right, which is a very relevant component in our setup in general. And then there is the generator part. So generator basically takes that information that it has retrieved and it will pass on context. So context is typically the user prompt as to what you want to do with that content, right? And it will take the retrieved data and your context and it will work with a LLM to basically generate that response for you, right? So RAG is this model in general. So I can simply say
Mm.
retrieve.
Retrieve, augment, and generate is like okay.
Okay, retrieve, augmented, and generate. Right. So like I was saying, it works with a vector database.
Hmm.
So have you heard of a vector database? I mean, I know you have
Yeah, I
heard
think
about it, but
I've,
uh,
I won't claim I know it, but I've used it. I've used
yeah,
vector databases to index the content. I think for one of our internal
yeah,
products, Skillex as well. But yeah,
yeah.
I will let you define it in a better layman terms, I guess, for everyone.
Yeah, so see, vector database, right? It's like a high dimensional database. But I mean, I'm not sure if that is also very clear definition. uh, okay, so let me actually go back a bit, right? So our typical relational database, right? They are two-dimensional database. Look, when I say two-dimensional, it's essentially like a 2D grid, right? Like there are rows and columns. So if you were to retrieve a cell in this table, it is going to give you that data that you are looking for, right? But when we talk typically about a vector database, right, or a high dimensional database, so it's not just fetching the data for you, but it knows about different attributes around that data so that you know something can be constructed out of it. Is that clear as well, or you want me to go even simpler?
Somewhat, this is somewhat clear, but yeah, I will let you actually continue because I
Okay.
think the flow should make it more clear
Yeah,
for me.
flow will make it clear, right? So like I was saying, right, I was going to come to RAG later on in my demo, but we kind of jumped to it, but that's not a problem. uh, okay, this was really bugging me, so I'm
Yeah,
going to
we know you are
quickly.
a yeah you like front
Yeah,
end and then
yeah,
yeah, so
so
that's
correct. So yeah, as I was saying earlier, right, like the content piece, it's actually the easiest thing to understand on this because it's typically your like pages or let's say documents, something like some piece of content that you want your AI to consume, right? But then
okay.
how is it going to consume that? So what will happen is uh, your content, whenever like let's say what will happen on your content, the typical operations are your CRUD operations that are going to happen. So whenever
Hmm.
any CRUD operations are happening, what you want is this content to be stored in a vector DB. Okay, so as I was
Okay.
saying, vector DB. So in our example, for example, we are using something called as a Chroma DB. So Chroma DB is again like a open source vector DB model.
Okay.
And what it does is it basically converts all the pieces of content into something called as a document, and it kind of stores that relation between okay how different content is related to one another and all that. Okay, and then you have the RAG setup. Now there is a big another big piece that we need to know about, which is called as a LLM. So I'm
Okay.
sure everybody who works with AI understands this term actually very well. LLM is nothing but a large language model.
Right.
And like there are many models out there, and I think initially also we kind of explored this a bit, right? You asked about okay, what are those different models, and I kind of showed you
Hmm.
the different models that exist and the different parameters as well. So in layman's term, again, like LLMs are like they are models that are trained on large amount of data, so that they understand language and they use this knowledge to perform your NLP tasks. So you can ask them any questions, and they can respond in like a human like language, so that you can consume that information. So let's say this is the
Okay.
learning model. Okay, now as I was saying earlier as well, right? Like we need to be able to use this model on our local. So I am using something called as a Olama setup. So
Okay.
Olama is like again it's a AI framework that allows you to run the models on your local, and there is like no cost associated with it because you are able to run it locally. And yeah, I mean, you can choose to run any model here. So I am using the Mistral 7B model, right? So
Okay.
now you have
But I
your
can switch to
LLM,
any
right?
other models as well, right? But I can
Yeah,
switch
yeah,
to any other
yeah,
models as
yeah,
well. Okay.
absolutely, absolutely. You can switch to any other model. So I'm just like going to just organize this a bit better. And again, like showing off my iPad skills
Yeah, man.
shamelessly, I might add.
It took me
Uh,
a yeah, it took me a while to learn all of these, but yeah, glad you are a pro within weeks.
Okay. So yeah, like I was saying, so these are like your typical components, right? So what are those typical components? Let's go over them one more time. So you have something content, right? Like it can be any content. Then you need a place to convert this content into something that AI can understand. So that's where you need something called as a vector DB, right?
Okay.
Then you need something called as a LLM. So LLM is again the main language
Model.
model that you are going to use. Correct. RAG setup is actually optional. This is not needed. Like for your typical use case, you won't really need it. But RAG allows you to, it allows certain advantages, right? Like the advantage is that one, you are able to run this AI model on your local data, which is what actually many people are looking forward. Like they don't really want information about whole lot of things in the world. They want AI to answer information. Sorry, AI to answer questions on the information they already have. So it can be like their intranet systems or their website or something like that. And that's where you need
Okay.
a RAG setup. Okay,
So is it
so
like when you say
hmm.
when you say local data, it is more about your knowledge base basically, right? I mean, there's something
Your
about you're
knowledge
trying
base.
to do.
Yeah. So in this case,
Uh,
local doesn't mean my machine, basically. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Okay. So in that
Yeah,
case, so for example, just maybe I'm jumping ahead, the content that we kind of added to the Drupal, that is my knowledge
yeah,
base. And
correct,
this RAG will be used to kind of respond on my queries based on that data only. Correct?
correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, so the typical flow, right? Like the as I was explaining earlier. So the typical flow is like you have some piece of content, and
Mhm.
that content, whatever operations are happening around. Like let's say you are creating new content or you are updating some content. It needs to go in a vector DB, right? So that it can convert it into documents, and it can basically store the data in a way that AI can consume it. AI can't directly consume your data. It needs to be
Okay.
stored somewhere so that, like again, I'm talking about this local context. So it needs to be stored in a way that AI model can consume it. Then, like I said earlier, RAG has two setups, right? So one is a retriever and the other is a generator. So every time there is a user prompt, right? So let's draw a typical user here. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So this is a typical user. So what this user is going to do is, like, let's say he is interacting with our page via a web page or a mobile app or a chat bot, right? Anything. I mean,
Right.
we don't know how he is interacting with our site, but he's basically calling some kind of API. So what it will do is they will provide a prompt typically,
Okay.
and this prompt is going to like RAG setup is going to use basically this prompt to fetch the relevant info from the vector DB.
So the API is of like so the API is at the RAG. So API makes a call to the RAG, and then
Yeah,
RAG makes use of the vector DB and the LLM model to basically
yeah. So
generate
it will
response and
so
then
so
feedback.
it's correct. So it's going to retrieve the stuff from vector database, and it's going to
Okay.
work with the LLM model to kind of generate that response. So what is happening here is, like,
Got
let's
it.
say in our case, right? I was asking about Kimi. So the prompt was from the user. The RAG
Right.
setup went to vector DB to kind of understand, okay, what information do we have around this topic. It fetched that information, and then it used this LLM model to kind of generate that response. So
Okay.
it's basically like a model where it's going to work only on our local data. Okay. And like, to make this entire setup a bit cleaner, right? Like, typically what would happen, like, if you see, right, LLM is interacting with RAG is interacting with vector DB, there is a user prompt as well, then Drupal also is interacting with vector DB for something. So in
Right.
a typical environment, like, let's say if you want to scale this model, right, you will need some kind of a middleware,
Middleware.
some,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Makes
you
sense.
will need some kind of a middleware to kind of manage everything. So let's say there is a API middleware here. Let's say a fast API setup or something like that, right? So what will happen
Right.
is, every time Drupal wants to say that, okay, hey, I have some updated content, it's going to call some API call. Then this API call is going to send that information to vector DB, right?
Right.
And then RAG, like, let's say the user as well, right? Like, we have a user here. So this user also is going to send that prompt directly to middleware. It's not going to interact directly with the RAG setup. And again, like, this middleware is going to interact with our RAG setup, which in turn will directly pull information from vector DB and the LLM. And again, it will
Yeah.
respond back to this way via the middleware to the user. So
Correct.
this is your typical setup, right? Like, and if you were to, like, even go one step beyond, right? Uh, this typically is your CMS setup. Like, nothing changes in here. And when
Or
we
any
talk
other
about,
content source, right? Not necessarily
yeah, yeah,
CMS, right? I mean, because
yeah, yeah,
it could be
any other
any other content
correct.
source.
Absolutely, it can be any content store. So uh, that is the content part, and then you have your some LLM and RAG and vector DB, right? Uh,
Yeah.
This typically is what will constitute as your AI setup. Now, this need not
Okay.
be a single setup, right? Like, let's say you are using a different vector DB and it's hosted on a different cloud somewhere. That's also
Hmm.
possible, right? So, in our case, this was a CMS, right? And this entire AI setup is basically a Python setup right now that's running on my local. And this middleware is like a fast API server, again running on my local. So everything is right now very, what do you call, like, created in a way to basically bootstrap the application very fast.
Yeah.
But that's not typically how you would run it, right? Like, typically, maybe this is a good point to actually mention the example you were talking about earlier, where Michael is working on, right? You
Right.
want to
Right.
give a brief summary about it?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll give actually a brief summary about Michael, our director of intelligent automation at Axelerant is doing, and then some of the things that, so if you recollect, we work on Insight Engine long back as
Yeah.
well, right? I mean, as an hackathon.
Right.
So what we're trying to do it is that I think we have different knowledge bases or different content, like in this example, right? So there is a website, there is a knowledge base that we have like Slack, Jira, Confluence, Google Docs, right? So there are these various sources of information. For one example is like our open handbook, our policies, everything resides within the Confluence as well, right? So now this is a content source. I think what Michael, if I understand it correctly, right, what he's doing is that he's taking all of these sources similar to how you are doing, using the APIs. I think he's using make.com to enable and do this as an automation.
Yeah.
I'm assuming in the Drupal you used hooks. So whenever there's a CRUD operation, you push
Yeah.
the content to the vector DB or via this middleware. I think what he's doing is that he has created workflows in Make using Make automation platform, and he's pulling the content from website, from Confluence, creating a vector storage or vector database. And I think that
Yeah.
vector storage is linked with the OpenAI. So I guess
Yeah. We
over
are
here
using
your LLM
OpenAI
is
there.
local.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
We're using OpenAI.
Yeah.
Obviously, I mean, like you mentioned, right? I mean, Michael has a lot of money, but nonetheless, I mean, we are. I mean, I think all of us now have OpenAI subscription as well in general to try it out and make a submission. But I just jokes apart, right? I think we can use OpenAI to become that agent, and OpenAI obviously have that interfaces where you can build those end user interfaces as well and interact with just like how people interact with ChatGPT. So it's like ChatGPT
Yeah.
with a very closed source data.
Closed
But
source. Correct.
one thing I'm worried about that is, and maybe I'm not too familiar with it. What happens to the data, right? I don't know. I mean, because it's OpenAI, our vector storage, OpenAI models have access to maybe our proprietary data or confidential data. One
Yeah.
difference that I could see is that over here, I mean, we have fuller control of the data. Over there, our vector storage is exposed to OpenAI. I don't know if that is of any
Yeah, I mean,
concern or.
see, it's. I think it's a big concern actually. Like, if you follow general AI blogs around security, right? It's a
Yeah,
big concern around how the data is going to be used. Because see, ultimately, we have to realize that these LLM models, right? It doesn't matter whether it's like a local model or like, let's say, all these models are ultimately backed by some company. Like nobody's
right.
doing it for free. Even though the models are open, like when I say open, these are like basically open source models, right? And they claim to like share things like, okay, this is the data that it's trained on, and so on and so forth. And then there are closed models. Like for example, you mentioned OpenAI, right? Like so, OpenAI,
Right,
like GPT, is the name of the model, right? OpenAI is a basically company. The
right.
model's name is the GPT-4 model,
GPT.
which is the most recent, right?
Right.
So that's a closed model. You don't know what data it's
Hmm.
getting trained on, right? So even though these companies claim that, okay, yeah, we won't use your data and all that,
Hmm.
but the fact remains that you need data to improve these models. It can't be improved. Like there is no other way to do that, right? And
Yeah.
there is like a huge debate going on right now that, okay, all the data that exists out in the world right now, public data basically, which has been used to train these models, I think that will exhaust pretty soon, and these models will require more data to become more intelligent, right? So it's like
Okay.
there is like a limit to how much these models can improve with the publicly available data. But yeah, I mean, it's a big debate going on right now, and you are absolutely right. Like if you were able to host all these things on your own, you have much better control and much better like let's say sanity around, okay, how my data is being used by AI.
Okay, that's interesting. So no, okay. I mean, I'm just the more I think about this, right? I mean, like there's the SkillX example. So again, maybe
Yeah.
our audience may not know what SkillX is. So it's an internal product. I mean, we hope we will take it to the market one day as well. But then we always have these challenges to track the skills, certification projects, engagements internally, right? Who has worked on what, who has what skills, and shared as a platform. So we created this knowledge platform. Again, but then yeah, it's a product. It works well. We have been using it. 200 plus people are kind of using it internally. But then one of the things that we wanted to do with that is build this insight engine. So now that we have access to all of this information, how we can make use of it,
Yeah.
and that's where we were exploring. So if you recollect that this entire
Yeah.
setup of, I mean, back
Correct.
then we tried OpenAI as well, a few other models that were available, GPTs and few others and all, but we were not able to achieve the satisfying results back then. Like because we were also trying to connect the Jira, Confluence with it,
Yeah.
Google Doc and all. One of the challenges that I came across was like like these models work well, like a Drupal kind of a content where you have these fields. There's a bigger description field where you have
Mm.
all of your content. But in the real world, there are a lot of these taxonomy based things as well, like especially in Drupal terms, right? I mean, you have these
Yeah.
taxonomy skills, certification, everything else. Right? How do you index? I think that we were just not able to figure out what's the best way to index
Correct.
the unstructured data into a vector DB for it to make sense. So I don't know
Yeah.
if that you came across, or is that like the accuracy of this result is a challenge for you or no in
Yeah,
your
so I mean,
experience?
you actually described a real world problem there, right? Right. In a real world scenario, the site is not going to be as simple as the content I was using, where
Yeah,
everything was there in a body field and the vector DB just had to read through it. Typically, what will happen is like you described, right? There will be different entities, fields will be spread across multiple entities, and ultimately a piece of content and all the information and all the metadata will be scattered. So how you take that data and how you kind of structure it in a way that vector DB is able to kind of understand it fully, that is actually a challenge, and that is something
hmm.
people should really focus on if they want to use this LLM models and AI to the fullest. Otherwise,
Yeah,
like you said, like I am aware of the problem that we ran into, where what happens is, these references get missed, and everything is not, like I said, in a body field somewhere. So
right.
somewhere and this is actually very uh, like we can use the search analogy here, right? Like I think before uh, I keep forgetting. Yeah, before Solar, right? And when we used to use database search, it was also a similar problem. Not everything was in one table, not everything was in one entity. So you were basically doing a lot of joins and doing a lot of like pulling data from different tables, smashing it together, and then kind of returning as if, yeah, hey, everything is in one place. Uh, and then Solar came along, and then we were able to better structure the data in a way so that Solar can understand it and then use it for information like facets and filters and whatnot, right? So
Right.
this is actually a very similar problem if you think about it. It's just a bit different because it's now related to AI and not directly related to like Solar or relational database, which you can resolve using queries or something like that.
No, makes sense. Yeah, no, this is a very interesting thing, and I know. I mean, it has opened up so many use cases already. I mean, we are also talking to a few customers where they are interested in doing AI-based search. You already talked about the metadata, the alt text for the images, for the assets, right? I mean, especially in the content of the CMS world, right? I mean, what can we do? And there are so many already use cases and the talks that we are having with our customers as well. So it's a beginning, I guess, at this point in time. I mean, we were able to kind of do small POCs at this point in time with an actual use cases. But I think things like these, the things that you have just demonstrated us as kind of opens up more possibilities because there are customers who are worried about their security of the data, the financial
Yeah.
and the healthcare sector or the financial or the banking sector, right? Especially they're worried about the information going to OpenAI and they are not really
Hmm.
willing to do that yet. Yeah, maybe OpenAI does not use that data, but maybe it does, right? So
Hmm.
we don't
And
know for
it
sure
need
yet.
not be OpenAI as well. So this is again like
Yeah. Okay.
one of the stories that I found on LinkedIn, right, from a
Hmm.
person. I keep forgetting the name. I think it was Charles something. He is actually an author in O'Reilly, and
Okay.
so he had presented an interesting use case where like he had recently attended Black Hat, one of the Black Hat
Hmm.
events, and what people were saying is let's say you have set up a AI which is like set up to read all your company emails and simply responding to, hey, okay, can you find this information for me, when it happened, blah blah blah. And it's because it's reading your emails, it's able to answer that, right? Now let's say some person finds out like some let's say bad vector find, they basically send you a email, official looking email with some potential to like cause a security thing, or
Hmm.
AI learns it, and now
Yeah.
AI knows about it. So
Hmm.
they are using essentially AI's ability to learn from the content and generate stuff as an attack vector in itself.
Okay.
to to basically cause harm to your internal systems. So
Yeah.
while like yeah, I mean, like you said, like clients are interested, and I know many of these things we have discussed together. But people need to kind of go one step further and ask, where is AI going to help me or my customers or my
Right.
company? It's like, yeah, it's a very popular thing. It's a very cool thing. And yeah, I mean, so yeah, people need to think more about it for sure. I mean, it can't
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
be, okay, I want AI, let's bring in AI.
Yeah. Got it, got it, yeah. So it's no magic wand, right? I mean, you need to figure out your use case and then
Yeah.
use it accordingly, right? I mean, and making sure that it really benefits you rather than just being a cool thing sitting within your
Yeah.
product organization in general. Okay, I mean, I know we wanted to do more like 15-minute, 20-minute recordings, so then we are like close to 15 minutes now. So I'm glad we did this. I think there's so many things that kind of came out of this, and I can see Smithy in the background as well.
Yeah.
Uh,
Sorry about that.
but that's all right. I think one last thing before we wrap up, right? I mean, um, are we going to see more videos or like these or more discussion? I know we started with this one-off thing where our internal POCs came out and we did this. We thought that would be good to share and talk more about it. And while we were having this internal discussion, and yeah, we just thought both internally and externally for Excellent, this would be useful video, right? Do you plan to do these more often? And I don't know, how do you take it up further?
Yeah, I mean, I think I plan to keep doing it. Like I said, I love to tinker with things. I don't know where I will get. I don't really have a goal in mind as well. But
Yeah,
I do want to try out different different scenarios. Like I think content generation and RG setup. Uh, I think this use case is particularly interesting because, like think about like let's say there is a university website or like let's say I mean I don't know, like a UN site or something, right, which has like
yeah,
thousands and thousands pieces of content. Search is such a one dimensional thing, like you just type keyword and it gives you content, but somebody is looking for a specific piece of information, right? And I think AI is
yeah.
the best use case for such kind of industries and such kind of verticals where like you can just ask through that prompt that, hey, I need information about this, and they can like not give you 10 links. They can if you want, if you configure your AI model that way, but they can like answer that query based on your data, not global data.
Got
And
it.
that could be like really interesting use case. And I know like you have yourself explained many of the clients who want some things like this done. Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
hopefully we can figure out
Yeah, that makes
solutions pretty
sense.
soon.
Yeah, yeah, and I think the POC, this POC, and the work that Michael has been doing, and what we did within the hackathons.
Yeah,
Interestingly, just yesterday, one of our team members proposed this to the UN client, the OSCHR. I think we are exploring the possibilities to do a little bit more and help out their editorial team. So yeah, I'm excited about the possibilities in general. And just to kind of share, I think when it comes to these videos and the sharing this knowledge, there's a lot that Hussein within the developer experience services is doing as well. It's broadly the
yeah,
developer experience, the tooling around it. But AI is one of the prominent thing over here, including I know we are kind of going in a different direction with this, but then still just to share, he's actually getting into adopting tools like Copilot and others to help out developers, and then also some of these features which can be available out of the box to our customers. Yeah, I'm already excited about the possibilities, and I'm sure we'll do more videos like this with Hussein, yourself, and
yeah,
others, and then and yeah, and share it with our customers and make the best use of it. So yeah, thank you, sir, for I think being here. I think I'm sure
yeah. Thank you.
someone or more people will watch this, and hopefully they will find it interesting. But yeah, till then, thank you for being here and then sharing the entire story and the architecture and the demo.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm glad to join.